What if I told you that the single most powerful way to learn English isn't a textbook, isn't a grammar chart, and isn't even a classroom? It's something you've been doing since you were a child. It's a story.
And not just any story. The right kind of story at the right moment can completely change the way English feels in your brain. We're going to talk about exactly that today.
Welcome back to the Daily English Conversation Club. I'm Zara.
And I'm Leo. And if you're new here, hi. So glad you found us. This channel is all about helping you speak, understand, and feel confident in English through real, natural conversation. No boring grammar drills, no stiff textbook sentences. Just real talk. Like this.
Exactly. And today's topic is honestly one of my personal favorites, learning English through stories. Leo, before we dive in, I have to ask, do you remember the first English story you ever got genuinely hooked on? Like, not assigned to you in school, but one you actually chose to read or watch because you wanted to?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, it was a cartoon. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and there was this animated show. I don't even remember the name now, but the characters spoke English, and I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough to follow the story. And I remember thinking, oh, so that's what that word means. Not because someone explained it to me, because I saw it happen in the story. That was kind of a turning point, actually.
Yes, that's exactly it. That feeling of getting it without being taught, that's the magic of stories. And it turns out there's real science behind why this works so well for language learning. When you're emotionally engaged in a story, when you care what happens next, your brain is working differently than when you're memorizing vocabulary from a list.
Right, because when you're memorizing a list, you're using one part of your brain. But when you're inside a story, you're using emotion, imagination, memory, prediction, all of it at once. And language just sticks.
Totally. It's like the difference between trying to remember someone's name at a party versus remembering the name of the villain in a movie you loved. One just stays with you because it has feeling attached to it.
Okay, that is such a good analogy. I'm going to use that.
You're welcome. Now, and we genuinely want to hear from you on this. We want to ask you, our listeners, a question right now. Think about a story, a book, a movie, a TV show, a cartoon, anything that you watched or read in English that you actually enjoyed. Drop it in the comments below. Tell us the name and tell us one word or phrase you remember learning from it. Just one.
Yes, we read every single comment, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend who's learning English, and let's build this community together. Okay, Zara, let's keep going, because I want to talk about why stories work so differently from traditional studying.
Let's go. So here's something that I think surprises a lot of learners when they first hear it. You don't actually need to understand every single word in a story for the story to teach you English. In fact, stopping to look up every word you don't know is one of the biggest mistakes learners make.
Which feels counterintuitive, right? Like, shouldn't I know what every word means?
It feels like you should, but here's what actually happens. When you stop every 2 sentences to open a dictionary, you break the flow. You lose the emotional thread of the story. And that emotional thread is the very thing that's helping the language stick in your brain. So what researchers actually recommend, and what a lot of successful language learners do, is called extensive reading or extensive listening. You read or listen to things that are slightly below your level or just at your level, and you focus on understanding the overall meaning. Context does the teaching.
And context is everything. I mean, think about how babies learn language. Nobody sits a toddler down and says, okay, today we're going to study the past tense. They just hear language used in real situations over and over, in context, and eventually it clicks.
Exactly. And for adults, stories give us that same rich context. So let's talk about what kind of stories actually work best, because this matters. It's not just any story. There are a few things that make a story ideal for language learning.
Okay, hit me.
First, and this is the most important one, you have to actually be interested in it. I can't stress this enough. If you are forcing yourself to read a story because someone told you it's good for English, but you find it boring, it's not going to work. Your brain needs engagement. It needs to want to know what happens next.
Yes, and I think a lot of learners feel guilty about this, like they think they should be reading classic literature or serious novels. But honestly, if you love romance stories, read romance. If you love thrillers, read thrillers. If you love cooking shows or travel vlogs, watch those in English. The topic matters far less than the interest.
Completely agree. Phrase of the day moment. Write this down or just listen closely. I couldn't put it down. That's what we say in English when a book or story is so good you just can't stop reading. I started the book at 10 at night and I couldn't put it down. I finished it at 3 in the morning. Beautiful phrase. Very natural, very useful.
Love that one. Okay, so interest is number one. What's number two?
Number 2 is level. The story should be mostly understandable. Linguists talk about something called comprehensible input. It means the language is just slightly above what you already know. Not so easy that you're learning nothing, not so hard that you're lost, just that sweet spot where you're stretching a little.
The sweet spot. Okay, that's a great place to pause part one. Coming up in part two, we're going to get into the real story. We're going to talk about a specific moment where storytelling completely changed the way a listener experienced English. And trust me, it's the kind of story you'll relate to immediately.
Welcome back. So, Leo, before we get into the story, I want to try something. I want to ask our listeners to do a little mental exercise with me. Wherever you are right now, commuting, cooking, working out, lying in bed, I want you to think back to a time when you heard or read something in English and you just felt it. Not translated it, not analyzed it, just felt it.
Oh, I like this. Because that moment, when English stops being a foreign language in your head and starts being something you experience, that's huge. That's a real shift.
It really is. And today, I want to tell a story about someone who had exactly that shift. Her name is Priya. She's a listener of ours. She sent us a message a few weeks ago, and I've been wanting to share it ever since, because I think so many of you will see yourself in her story.
Tell it. I'm already interested.
So, Priya had been studying English for about 4 years. She'd done courses, she'd done apps, she'd memorized vocabulary lists, the whole routine. And she could read English well enough, she could write okay, but every time she tried to speak, she said it felt like her brain was running a translation program in the background, Bengali to English, English to Bengali, constantly. It was exhausting, and it made her feel slow and self-conscious.
That's such a common experience. I've heard so many learners describe it exactly that way. Like there's a delay, like you know the language, but it's not yours yet.
Exactly that. So one evening, she was bored, she couldn't sleep, and she started watching a Netflix series in English, one she'd already seen before in a dubbed version in her own language. So she already knew the story, she already knew the characters, and because of that, she wasn't stressed about understanding everything. She just watched.
Oh, that's clever because the pressure was off.
The pressure was completely off, and she said something really interesting happened after about 20 minutes. She stopped noticing that she was watching in English. She was just watching the show. She was laughing at the jokes, she was tense during the tense scenes, she was inside the story. And the next morning, she said she caught herself thinking in English, not translating, just thinking. And the phrase that popped into her head was something a character had said the night before, totally naturally, no effort.
Honestly, that gives me chills a little. Because that's not a study technique. That's just immersion through joy, you know? She wasn't trying to learn. She was just enjoying something, and the language came in through the side door.
Through the side door. I love that. That's exactly what happened. And this is the core idea we want you to really sit with today. Joy is a learning strategy. When you enjoy what you're listening to or reading, your brain is open. It's not guarded. It's not in test mode. It's just receiving. And in that state, language acquisition happens almost automatically.
Now here's where I want to push back just a little. Not on the idea, but on something I think some listeners might be thinking. Someone might be listening right now and thinking, okay, but I don't have time to just sit and watch TV for hours. I have a job, I have a family, I'm busy. And I hear that. So what do you say to that person?
Great question. And honestly, I'd say it doesn't have to be hours. It can be 15 minutes. It can be one episode before bed. The key is consistency over intensity. 15 minutes every day is worth infinitely more than 3 hours once a week, because language learning is about repetition and exposure over time. Your brain needs to hear the same patterns again and again in different contexts, and slowly, very slowly, and then very suddenly, it clicks.
Slowly and then very suddenly. That's actually a great description of what language learning feels like. Like nothing is happening for months, and then one day you just understand a conversation you never could have followed before.
Yes. Okay, myth versus reality time. Ready?
Ready.
Myth. You need to study grammar rules before you can enjoy English stories.
Reality. You can start enjoying stories at any level. In fact, stories would teach you grammar patterns naturally through repeated exposure, far better than a textbook ever could. The grammar comes after the feeling, not before it.
Perfectly said. And here's our gamified comment challenge for this part of the episode. We love doing these because you guys always bring the best responses. Here's the challenge. Think of one English word or phrase you learned from a story, a movie, a show, a book, anything. Write it in the comments with the name of the story you learned it from. Just one word or phrase.
We're going to look through every single one. And if your comment gets a lot of likes from the community, we might feature it in a future episode. So get in there. Comment now while it's fresh.
And if you're enjoying this episode, please share it with someone. Seriously, if you know someone who's been struggling with English or feels stuck, send them this episode. This could be exactly what they need to hear today.
Coming up in part 3, we're getting practical. We're going to give you a real, usable system for using stories to learn English every. All right, part 3. This is where we get into the how, because understanding why stories work is great, but I think what most learners really need is, what do I actually do? What does this look like in real life?
Right, because the idea of just enjoy stories in English sounds good, but it can also feel a little vague. Like, where do I start? What do I look for? How do I make this a habit? So let's break it down practically.
Step 1, and we kind of touched on this. Pick something you already know, a movie you've seen in your language, a story you've read before, a TV show you love but have only watched dubbed. Start there. Because when you already know the plot, your brain can focus entirely on the language instead of the story. You're not using energy on what's happening. You can use it all on how it's being said.
This is such good advice, and I don't think enough people use it. It feels like cheating, but it's actually smart. You're basically giving your brain a scaffold. The story is the scaffold, and the language is what you're actually building.
Exactly. Step 2, don't use subtitles in your own language. I know. It's tempting. But the moment you read a subtitle in your own language, your brain switches off to English. You're no longer listening, you're reading a translation. If you need subtitles, use English subtitles. That way, your ears and eyes are both receiving English together. It reinforces everything.
And honestly, after a while, try no subtitles at all for short stretches, even just 5 minutes. See how much you understand. You might surprise yourself.
Step 3. After you watch or read something, don't immediately move on. Give yourself 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, and in those 2 minutes, try to recall one sentence or phrase that you noticed, something that sounded natural, something you'd never thought of saying before. Write it down or say it out loud.
This is what I'd call the one-phrase habit, and it's so small but so powerful. Over 30 days, that's 30 real English phrases from real context, not from a list, but from a story you actually enjoyed. That's a vocabulary notebook that feels nothing like studying.
And you'll actually remember them, because every phrase has a story attached to it. Every word has a face, a scene, an emotion connected to it. That's how memory works.
Now, grammar insight time. And we're keeping this light, I promise. One thing that stories teach you really naturally is the rhythm of English sentences. In English, the most important information usually comes at the end of the sentence. She finally called. He never looked back. They made it. Short, punchy, the weight lands at the end. And when you listen to stories, you start to feel this rhythm. You start to know instinctively where the sentence is going. That intuition, That's grammar, but learned through feel, not through rules.
You know, I actually never thought about it that way, but it's true. When I write in English now, I don't think, is this the correct structure? I just feel if it sounds right. And that came from years of listening, not from studying.
That's the goal. Okay, mini challenge time. Here's what we want you to do this week. Find one short story in English. And when we say short, we mean genuinely short. A YouTube video, a 5-minute podcast clip, one episode of a short animated series, even a children's picture book if you want. Something under 10 minutes. Watch or read it once just for enjoyment. Then go back and find one phrase. Write it down, use it in a sentence of your own, and drop that sentence in our comments this week.
Yes, use the phrase in a sentence, any context, and post it below. We will reply to as many as we can, and the most creative sentences, we'll give those a special shout out in our community.
Okay, let's zoom out for the big idea recap, because I think today has been genuinely full and I want to make sure the core idea lands.
Please, yes, because there's a lot here. The big idea is this. Stories are not just entertainment, they are one of the oldest and most powerful technologies for transferring knowledge, emotion, and language between human beings. When you put yourself inside a story, a good story, one you actually care about, you are doing something your brain was literally designed to do. And in that state, language learns itself. You are not studying English. English is finding you.
Wow. English is finding you. Okay, that's our episode quote. I love that.
Zara's phrase of the day, your signature segment moment, Leo.
Okay, today's phrase of the day, pulled from everything we talked about, is I couldn't put it down. If you've ever been so hooked on something you couldn't stop, that's the phrase. I started watching at midnight and I couldn't put it down. Use it this week.
Beautiful. And one more quick vocabulary highlight before we close. The word immersion. Immersion means surrounding yourself completely in something. When you watch, listen, read, and even think in English, that's immersion. You don't have to move to another country to get it. You can create it at home, on your phone, on your commute. Immersion is a choice.
Immersion is a choice. That deserves to be on a poster.
Right? Okay, final comment challenge before we close. This one's for points, metaphorically speaking. Drop in the comments what is one type of story you're going to try in English this week. A movie, a podcast, a book, a show? Tell us. And if you've already been using stories to learn English, tell us how it's been going. Seriously, we want to know.
We genuinely read every comment. This community means everything to us, and the conversations in the comments are honestly sometimes better than the episodes.
Don't tell our producer that.
Okay, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Ring that bell so you never miss an episode. Share this with one friend who's learning English. You might just change their entire experience with the language.
Next episode, we're going to be talking about how to think in English, not translate. Think. And it's going to completely shift the way you approach your learning. You don't want to miss it.
Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and remember,
English is finding you. See you next time.